Okay, let's unpack this. When you hear the name Rosa Parks, what immediately springs to mind?
Well, for most of us, right, it's that single image.
The bus.
Yeah.
December 1st, 1955.
Yeah.
That moment.
Exactly. Igniting the Montgomery Bus Boycott. It's a foundational moment, an undeniable act of courage.
Absolutely. But what happens after that? You know, if the cameras leave and the headlines kind of fade?
It's striking, really, how often we distill these incredible lives down to, well, to just one moment.
Right.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, it means we miss the decades of dedication, the hardship, the unwavering commitment that truly defines a figure like her.
Yeah.
It really raises the question, what does true heroism look like beyond that one famous act?
Exactly. And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We're drawing from excerpts of Rosa Parks' Life Beyond the Bus Seat to uncover that untold story, the personal cost of defiance, the relentless struggle, and the profound resilience of a woman who is just so much more than a moment on a bus seat. You might think you know Rosa Parks, but honestly, prepare for an aha moment. It could really redefine what it means to be a hero.
Definitely.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. You'd think after the boycott succeeded in December 1956, Rosa Parks would be celebrated, right? Finally find some peace.
You would think so. But the source material shows that heroism came with a crushing, immediate personal cost.
What did that actually look like for her day to day?
Well, the act that made her a symbol also instantly made her a target, a huge target.
Yep.
She faced daily death threats at her home in Montgomery, anonymous calls, letters filled with, horrific racial slurs.
And not just her.
No, that's the thing. It extended to her husband, Raymond. He was a quiet barber, suddenly thrust into this really dangerous spotlight, too.
Wow. And economically.
Oh, the retaliation was swift and merciless. She lost her job as a seamstress at the Montgomery Fair department store. Gone.
Just like that.
Just like that. And Raymond, he was forced out of his job at Maxwell Air Force Base. Why? Because his wife's notoriety was, well, unwelcome.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So their income just vanished.
Pretty much. Their savings dwindled fast, and local businesses, they were too scared to be associated with them. Nobody would hire either of them.
The fear was that palpable.
Absolutely. And beyond the tangible threats and the money, think about the psychological toll.
Right.
Rosa was natural private. She struggled immensely with the constant scrutiny. She never wanted fame. She just wanted justice.
And suddenly she's maybe the most famous woman in America.
Exactly. She couldn't even go grocery shopping without people staring, whispering, pointing. Sleep became elusive. Lying awake, listening for sounds, terrified of violence.
And Raymond?
He was already a man of few words, apparently, became even more withdrawn. Their marriage, which was strong, faced this unprecedented strain.
So, faced with all this in Montgomery, no jobs, constant threats, isolation, what could they even do?
Well, the situation just became unbearable. By early 1957, after months of this, they made the agonizing decision to leave.
To leave home.
To leave home, join the Great Migration, like millions of other African Americans.
Heading north. Where did they go?
They were seeking anonymity, seeking work. Detroit seemed like the place, the Motor City, booming auto industry, large black population.
A chance for a fresh start.
That was the hope. Plus, Rosa's brother, Sylvester Macaulay, he was already there, working in the auto plants, living a life free from the really overt Jim Crow they knew.
Still, that journey, leaving everything behind at 44, friends, community.
It must have been profound. A liberation in some ways, but also a huge loss.
And Detroit. Was it the promised land they hoped for?
Well, our sources tell us it offered more economic opportunity, yes, and less overt segregation.
No.
But northern racism, it was still there. Often more subtle, maybe, but just as damaging.
It was not an easy transition either.
No, the early years in Detroit were financially very tough. Rosa found work eventually as a seamstress in a clothing factory.
Back to sewing.
Back to sewing. Demanding work didn't pay well, but it was something, some stability. Raymond's jobs, though, were often temporary, insecure. It was still a struggle.
But despite the money struggles, there must have been differences, freedoms.
Oh, absolutely. Simple things. She could walk down the street without that constant fear. Ride a bus without having to think about where to sit. Enter a store through the front door.
Things we just take for granted.
Exactly. And for her, those everyday acts must have felt revolutionary. A world away from Montgomery.
And what about her activism? Did she leave that behind in the South?
No, and that's what's so compelling. Amidst all this, she reconnected with that passion for civil rights, the movement was evolving rapidly, you know?
Right. Things were changing.
And Rosa realized her experience in Montgomery, far from being a burden she had to hide, was actually a valuable asset.
How did that reconnection happen?
Well, this is where her profile begins to shift again. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself.
Oh, really?
Yes. He recognized her symbolic power, obviously. When he learned she was in Detroit, he reached out. The SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
Which was still pretty new then, right? Founded in 57.
Exactly. Still young. They were coordinating nonviolent resistance. They brought her into the fold.
What was her role there? Was she out front again?
Initially, it was more behind the scenes, fundraising, organizational work, tasks where her natural ability to connect with people, her understanding of grassroots organizing really shone.
Okay.
She started traveling the Midwest, speaking at churches, community centers, schools, sharing her story to raise money for civil rights activities.
It's incredible because wasn't she naturally quite shy, uncomfortable with public speaking?
Deeply. But she understood how important her testimony was. Every time she spoke, she was, in a way, reliving that fear from the bus.
Must have been hard.
Immensely. But she also saw its power, the power to inspire people, to mobilize them.
And did this work help her personally, connect her with others?
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, these speaking tours, her SCLC work, it brought her into contact with key leaders. Coretta Scott King, Ralph Abernathy.
Building a new network.
Exactly. A crucial sense of purpose, of community. It helped offset some of that isolation she often felt.
Then the 60s arrived. The student movement really took off.
Yes.
Like-
SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, founded in 1960, that really energized her.
What was it about those young activists?
They reminded her of her own determination, I think. Her idealism from her younger years, it raised that question. How do different generations of activists support each other?
And how did she support
In
them?
very practical ways. She provided financial support, organizing fundraising events in Detroit for the sit-ins, the freedom rides, voter registration drives down south.
So using her connections in Detroit.
Yes. And also mentorship. She became sort of an informal advisor to many young activists, sharing her hard-won wisdom, her experiences.
It sounds like it was really reciprocal.
It truly was. They drew inspiration from her courage, her moral standing, and she found renewed purpose, renewed energy from their efforts.
Did any specific actions resonate with her?
The Freedom Riders, particularly. Their bravery challenging segregation on interstate buses, it must have reminded her so vividly of her own act of defiance.
Yeah, that direct echo.
And it reinforced her core belief. Ordinary people can create extraordinary change.
Okay, so she's active with SCLC supporting SNCC. Then comes another shift.
Yes. In 1965, a really significant one, she began working for Congressman John Conyers, Jr.
John Conyers, okay, in Detroit.
In Detroit. A young African-American lawyer, just elected. This job would really define the next phase of her life.
Why did Conyers hire her? Was it symbolic?
It was symbolic, absolutely. Having Rosa Parks on staff brought instant credibility to his civil rights work, but it was practical, too. He knew she had the organizational skills he needed.
What was her actual title, her role?
She was officially a receptionist and assistant, but her role was much bigger than that title suggests.
How so?
She really became the public face of his district office, greeting visitors with that characteristic grace and dignity. Her presence alone was a powerful living reminder of the ongoing struggle.
Keeping that history alive right there in the office.
Exactly. And importantly, this position finally brought her some real financial stability.
That must have been a relief.
Huge. It allowed her and Raymond to move to a better neighborhood. And crucially, it gave her a platform to continue her advocacy work.
But focusing on different issues now.
Yes, more on the urban African-American issues specific to the North. Things like housing conditions, educational opportunities, employment discrimination in Detroit. She used her influence, her position, to support relevant legislation.
Drawing on her own experiences.
Directly. Her own experiences of economic hardship, of discrimination, fueled her work for Conyers.
So she finds this stability, this platform. But being Rosa Parks must have still been complicated.
Immensely. The burden of being a living symbol never really went away. She was transformed, from Rosa Parks the person into Rosa Parks the icon.
Empowering for the movement, maybe, but personally.
Very isolating. People approached her with this reverence, almost like she wasn't a normal human being.
That sounds difficult.
It brought unexpected challenges, constant requests. Speak here, serve on this committee, lend your name to this cause. For someone who valued privacy so deeply, it was often overwhelming.
How did she handle that?
She learned over time to be selective, to focus her energy on the causes that really aligned with her core values. She had to, really.
And the media, did they leave her alone by then?
Not completely. Reporters still sought her out, especially for anniversaries of the boycott. She had a really complicated relationship with the media.
How so?
Well, she understood it was important for public awareness, but she also resented how it constantly reduced her whole complex life back to that single moment on the bus.
Erasing everything else?
Pretty much. And what was fascinating here and really hidden from public view were the ongoing financial difficulties.
Even with the Conyers job?
Even then, those years of unemployment after Montgomery, they depleted their savings. They never fully recovered. They lived modestly, often struggling for basic necessities for medical care.
Wow. That's not the image most people have.
Not at all. And then Raymond's health started declining in the 1970s. That added immense stress, mounting medical bills. Rosa became his primary caregiver while still working full-time.
The physical and emotional toll must have been enormous.
Unimaginable. And her own health problems started to emerge as she got older, likely, compounded by decades of stress and trauma.
Did she ever speak about it? Ask for help?
Our sources say she rarely complained, maintained that quiet, stoic dignity that really defined her. She was reluctant to seek help, preferring to keep her struggles private rather than publicize them.
Just incredible resilience.
Absolutely. And through all of this, in her later years in Detroit, she never stopped advocating for justice, especially for those who lacked a voice.
Who was she focusing on then?
Her own experiences with poverty, with discrimination, gave her this deep empathy. She got involved in efforts supporting homeless individuals, improving conditions for the elderly, advocating for better services for the mentally ill.
Still working for change, just maybe in different ways?
Exactly. Her approach was characteristically quiet, practical, working behind the scenes, using her connections, opening doors, creating opportunities.
She understood that real change isn't always loud.
Precisely. It often happens away from the cameras, away from the headlines. Patient work. Building relationships, just showing up for people. And another powerful thing the sources highlight, she made a point to remember and honor other civil rights pioneers, especially those who'd been forgotten or marginalized, particularly women whose contributions were often overshadowed by the men in the movement. It really raises that important question. How do we make sure all contributions to history get acknowledged?
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
So when we connect all these dots, her life after Montgomery, what does it truly reveal?
It reveals a woman of just extraordinary resilience. Heroism wasn't just that one moment on the bus for her.
No.
It was a lifetime commitment, a sustained daily commitment to doing what's right, even when it came at immense personal cost.
Her quiet dignity through all of it, the threats, the job loss, the money struggles, health problems.
It speaks to a strength of character far beyond that one famous act. Her ability to stay committed to justice while navigating life as this living symbol, it offers profound lessons.
About leadership.
About leadership, yes, and about real, enduring moral courage.
This deep dive into her life after the bus, it really does transform how you see her, doesn't it?
Completely.
It's not just about that single act of defiance anymore. It's this lifelong, quiet commitment to justice, spanning decades, facing incredible hardship.
And her story is such a powerful reminder, isn't it? That the struggle for civil rights wasn't only about those dramatic headline moments.
Right.
It was also maybe even primarily about the daily, often unseen work, building a more just society, one small, principled step at a time.
It highlights the true heroes.
Yeah.
Maybe they aren't the ones looking for glory.
Exactly. They're the ones who just keep serving others tirelessly, quietly, long after the applause fades.
What a profound thought. Rosa Parks really showed us that courage isn't some flash in the pan. It's a sustained flame, burning bright through every single challenge.
Yeah.
So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening right now? It really prompts us to consider, what does it truly mean to live a life of principle day in and day out, especially when no one is watching? And maybe, how do we get better at recognizing and supporting those unsung daily acts of courage, the ones that really underpin major social change in our own lives and definitely in our communities?